All right, everyone. Welcome to today's live webinar, all about the power of connected coaching. Really pumped. We've got Mark Govier with us today. I've known Mark for, a little over a year now. And from day one, have been absolutely impressed, not only with his coaching tactics, his coaching style, but I think even more so as we've gotten to know each other, his entrepreneurial spirit. He's definitely a kindred spirit in that way, where he recognizes that he wants to be a fantastic coach, but also understands that there's a whole business element to take care of in order to be the best coach that you can be. Because if your business isn't working, you're not working. And so Mark's from Wales, and he's coached at a lot of different levels, but specifically kind of in this high performance world. And recently he made the move all the way over to Texas. We'll let him share that story in just a minute. But we've got a lot to cover, specifically around the business of coaching. So if you've got questions, please make sure that you ask those in the chat so that Jerem, our Academy manager, can filter those back to us at the very end. But with that, Mark, great to have you here, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, nice to catch back up, Spencer. It's been a bit of time, but glad to be here with you.
So I gave a brief intro, but usually it's really helpful if you can kind of give us 1 or 2 minutes of your trajectory of maybe just over the last 24 months or so, just kind of how things have been going for you, what you've put into play that's different, and kind of where you've landed now.
Okay, well, there's a lot to cover with a move across 3,000 miles across the pond as well. But yes, it basically all started around about the COVID time when I went into the Blueprint program with yourself, and the benefit of that has been, well, I just can't put it into words how much that's helped me, having time to almost come off the wheel and really think about, where I want to go with my business as a coach, how I wanted to sort of portray myself as a coach and the type of player I wanted to work with. So there's so many different facets that have changed over that period of time. But again, right. I was at Machanis there when I had my academy. I had 4 guys coaching under my banner there. And then the opportunity came up to move to over here to Altus in Texas with Cameron McCormack and his team, which is, it's been a lot of change, but it's been an amazing experience. Loving the opportunity to work with some of these best coaches in the world. So it's a lot's changed in 24 months. A lot changed prior to me leaving and developing my business, my coaching, and then also ended up out here. It's been amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was, like you obviously know, I've known Cameron for a long time. So really happy that you guys were able to connect and come together. And yeah, I think it's a fantastic place to be. He's not only a fantastic coach, but really does, I think, understand the business mechanics as well, and surrounds himself with people that fill in the gaps that maybe he doesn't have. Which is why you're obviously a good fit. Yeah,
no, I mean, and thank you, because you were a big part of creating that referral, and the rest has been history, so to speak. But they're just great guys to work with, as you said, very entrepreneurial, great coaches, great environment for learning, and sort of for myself and also for the students as well. So it's been exciting 4 or 5 months.
Right on. So let's backtrack a little bit, because a lot of what we wanted to talk about today was this time and income balance, right? Because as you well know, I am a huge proponent of everyone stopping the traditional selling time for money model and moving into selling your expertise. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And so I don't want to cut a bunch of corners or talk about a bunch of fluff. I want to kind of get as tactical as we can. So you were already somebody that was prioritizing your life equally, or maybe more than your business when we first met. You've only just refined that and became more efficient as we got together. But maybe talk us through what you were doing, before we met, and then what kind of changed and what you reprioritized in order to cut down the time, increase the income, and kind of delegate some of the responsibilities to other people as you were doing that.
Okay. So basically I started at Machanis in 2012 when I was approached there to be the head pro and sort of run the academy there, the coaching, the junior programs, and basically just develop the standard of coaching within the company, and then also look at the custom fit side of things. So when I first went there, it was like a multi-purpose role. I was running the academy. I was developing that side of things. We were trying to develop the junior academy there. So when I first went there, it was very much like a 6-day-a-week program, which I think probably most of the guys are in the same situation, probably 7 sometimes, because the 6th day you end up popping your head in or you're on emails. So very much long days coaching, trying to work the academy side of things, looking after the other pros. So I built up a very good stable over the last sort of 10 years there. Like I had like 1,000 live CoachNow profiles. So I had a lot of demand coaching wise. We had a junior academy with 100 kids in it. It was growing, quite fast. But with that was also my time was slowly disappearing, where I was just standing, coaching all day long, every single ability from the touring pros through to beginner level. So that's where I was prior to, your sort of program and your intervention, really.
Okay. So you hadn't started to kind of streamline things until we met. So let's dive into the time reduction, the income increases, kind of just some of the tactical things that you put in play. Because obviously there's advice, there's things that we can all share, but it's up to you to actually take the steps. So what are some of the things that you put into play that you found worked really well for you?
So the first steps really was I had this obviously huge demand for coaching, which is fantastic. But in there'd be a range of players. So you'd have players that were coming once a week. You'd have players coming once a quarter. You'd have players coming once a month. It was a real mixed bag. The varying abilities, the varying commitments as well. So one of the things that we talked about really was trying to sort of identify your perfect client. And that was one of the things that we did straight away. Is like, okay, well, I wanted to be more on the high performance side of things. That's where the majority of my coaching was being done. So I then decided I wanted to work with a goal-driven, committed learner. That was really the 3 big things I wanted from my students. Now I was happy to work with recreational golfers as well, but very much I needed to have an identity of like, this is me as a coach. This is how I portray myself. This is the player I want to work with, and this is what I expect from them as well as what they are expecting from me as a coach.
Right.
So then we put this, I put this tiered system in. So I then was able to sort of filter down a lot of my clients to my other coaches to help me facilitate them, because maybe they couldn't get in with me on a regular basis. So then it helped fill their diary up. Well, I was obviously getting a commission off the other pros then. So as they were growing their coaching business and doing a great job of it as well, it was obviously more income for myself on a business side. So then I was in the situation where now I could start to have less time on the tee, coaching. I was getting commissions off the other guys. They were getting busier. So then I was filtering down more players again. So again, I was getting more commissions off them, which worked really well. And I made an increase to my tariff. So I created a little bit of a separation between myself and the other coaches, which was 25%, which we talked about, in the program. And I think we all have that worry about, increasing our prices. What will it affect things? Will people walk away? Will they go to another coach? It made no difference. If anything, it got busier. But it created this little bit of separation between myself and the other coaches. And then they would filter up towards working with me then over a period of time. Right. So that was the first big change, because that immediately gave me a lot more income. I was spending like at least a day less at this point. So I probably down to about 4 days. And then eventually I worked down to 3 when I brought in the online coaching and really got that sort of driving forward.
I mean, I love hearing that, because I mean, just the other day I was sitting with a couple of coaches who were just on their way to burning out. And in fact, I think they're just fully burnt out already, largely because they're not in control of their destiny. And there's a lot of specifics that I could go into, but I won't. But the main thing is, how can you be in control of your destiny? A lot of us here on the webinar today are employees of other people. And Mark, in your new position, that's technically what you are. Yeah. But you've partnered up with the right people that still let you be you. So before we kind of dive more into where you are now, let's stay kind of back where you were, because there's a lot to learn there. So one thing that we hear from a lot of coaches is, how do I go just beyond me? So I'm a solo coach. How do I bring in other collaborators into my world? And then a lot of us here are golf coaches that might be directors of instruction or wanting to be that, or in some cases you're just working at a facility and you have the opportunity to collaborate with other people. So can you kind of walk us through maybe the early days of bringing other people in that kind of work with you and under you, and then maybe articulate a little bit clearer how you started to create the separation and the delegation so that so that you could take the advice that I was giving you, where you were kind of the upper echelon, or the goal for a lot of these people to reach was to work with you directly instead of you just giving your time to everyone.
Mm-hmm. So, we'd always had assistants, but going back in, I think when I actually set up, they actually allowed me to use my banner under the academy. That was probably like 2015. Okay. So I'd had that period of, like proving myself for 3 years, and developing it. And then the owner very kindly said, well, we want to use your banner, Elite Golf Coach banner. Great. As, the coaching is yours, you run it, we'll split commissions. And there was a sort of, everyone was benefiting from it, because he could see, hopefully there was a benefit to what I was bringing in and the extra players. And I just couldn't look after them all. There was just too much demand. And again, so I was in that situation.
Let's pause right there, Mark, because that is such a worry that a lot of people have. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think this is an important thing to dive into a little bit. You were fortunate enough in some ways to have the owner of the facility have that entrepreneurial mindset and not everything needs to be mine. Because some of you here on the call, I know, are working at a place where they don't have that. Mm-hmm. So you were fortunate in that sense, but you also took advantage of that and expanded upon that. I'm wondering, as you joined that facility in 2012, as you said, did you have a sense that that was the type of person that you'd be partnering up with? Did you know that they kind of had that mindset that they would be a good potential partner, or how did you suss that out at all before you joined, or no?
No, we'd had some brief discussions, but it was mainly through the director of golf at the time that brought me on. And I'd only met the owner a couple of times. And over that, 2 or 3 year period, we built a really good relationship. You could see we were on the same page. And it was probably a way of sort of maybe creating a bit of a tie-in sort of longer term as well. Yeah. But that just, that took time to evolve into that. At that point, I was just going there for better facilities and, a better standard of coaching. And it was progress, but I didn't know that was going to be the case. Okay. Like most people, I was in a similar situation where, I was an individual coaching, and then the opportunity arose, and that sort of took that opportunity and ran with it for the benefit of like the club and myself.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So continue on. I just want to make sure that that's clear, because there's so many folks that feel stuck, largely because they're not going into a new relationship with a 4 to 5 year horizon. Mm. And I think everybody here today, and including you, Mark, because you've lived it, hopefully will move into whatever relationships you create from a business standpoint moving forward with the entrepreneurial vision versus I'm just going to go there and just attach myself and just try to scrape things by, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you're setting yourself up for long-term failure if you don't have any level of understanding or clarity on where you want the relationship to go as you're establishing it. So just wanted to make that very clear, so none of you walk into a negative situation where you have no control or no partnership. So sorry to cut you off, but I just want to make sure.
It's a really good point. So then when that happened, I was then allowed to sort of bring in coaches who would work at dual purpose. They'd be helping out in the academy as well, but they would work on a self-employed basis for coaching. So it was great. I brought some great guys who really helped with the development level. So they were taking on the foundation level of the coaching for the kids, ladies group coaching, men's beginners level. And then also as well, a more experienced player. So then this is when, that system I was starting to get the commissions back. But at that point, I was probably still a little bit like trying to keep it to myself a little bit, because my clients, I've known some of these people for 20 years, so there's an emotional attachment to that person as well. And you don't know how they're going to react when you say, oh, look, I can't really work with you anymore. We've worked together 20 years, but now can you go work with this guy? But the way we did it was more like, okay, well, I'm going to sit as a mentor for you. I'm here if you need me. I'll be in your CoachNow. I'll be in your CoachNow profile. I can see what's going on. But this guy's a great guy. He'll look after you. He'll give you what you need. But I'm there in the profile. So I was like as a sort of a guest, so I could see what was going on. An additional coach, so I could sort of act as a mentor. So I think they felt like the handover was softer then, rather than just sort of, right, okay, you're finishing me, and now you're going with this chap.
That's a great piece of advice, and something that we talk to large organizations about, this idea of mentorship with newer coaches. And I think as you're articulating this, right, somebody worked with you for a long time, they could take it really poorly, right? Switching off. But if you're saying in some ways, and this is just maybe spin and on something that all of you can take, it's you're handing them off to maybe somebody that's a little bit more of a specialist in a particular area. Not to say this was the case, but that's a way that you could phrase it if it's true. Like, hey, you're still really struggling with your putting. Coach Spencer's really, really dialed in with putting. Plus, I'm going to be supervising and mentoring the entire experience just to step in if I need to. And then you can start handing off people to your new complementary coaches, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And that was one of the things that I was always trying to get my other coaches to go is like have some sort of specialist, have an identity. So even though I don't want you to pigeonhole you into you're a putting coach or you're a swing coach or you're a psychology expert, it's good to have something which makes you stand apart, which I think is important as a coach. So that was sometimes the way that I could play it was, like just go see this champ. He's great on putting. He lives on sands. He knows it like the back of his hand. They're like, I think he can really help you. And then ultimately they build a great relationship with them, and it worked well. It made the handover again a lot softer, a lot easier.
Yes. And so let's talk about the programming aspect of this, because a lot of folks here are still in that lesson model, time for money model, the a la carte model, as we've kind of spoken about. And I know that's not where you ended up. So let's talk about kind of the evolution of this lesson a la carte mindset into more of the programming and what I like to kind of call the subscription coaching models, and maybe kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, I think that was the game changer. I did have this retainer program running prior, but it was not something I was doing. I think one of the big things you said about my website was a la carte and some, it had every single option when you went on there. It's like, there's a gap test, there's a putting test, there's a short game session. It was just unnecessarily complicated. So what I then started to switch to was I was doing a much more holistic approach. So I was running more programs. So it was a monthly cost to that, which would give you X amount of time with me. It would give you X amount of time with my strength and conditioning guy. It would give you X amount of time with my sports psychologist. It was all done via Zoom and the app, via Dr. Golf and Reese Mooney, who the guys I worked with, who were fantastic. So then from then I was able to get a commission off the back of that. So I was making the referral. They were in my CoachNow profile. So we had this holistic approach to it. I was still doing an individualized session, but it was none of this, like all these different options you got to choose from. Right. It then became, okay, well, it's X, Y, and Z. So I had Aspire, Commit, Achieve with my 3 programs.
Yes.
So Aspire was like the more sort of entry level, less time with me, some remote time with me, and then work with the strength and conditioning and the sports psychology. And then the next one up had more time, but more support online, and then up again. So really it became like, these are my 3 programs. This is what I'm going to be selling. So before I left, that was becoming pretty much the business.
Yes.
So I had less clients paying more money, more quality, more development. They were more committed. Like everyone wins. Like they're getting better because they're getting more time. You're spending less time and getting more of a return from it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's an important piece to really hone in on too, because a lot of folks maybe hear the messages that I'm sharing where I'm really trying to help you save time, and you're thinking, oh, well, that's going to be less value to my students or my clients. But really, no, what I'm saying is coach less people, but deliver more value and create more win-wins. And if you bring in other collaborative coaches like you did such a nice job of, they're getting more value, but you're not necessarily the only one giving it to them. You're creating a holistic coaching approach that allows them to hopefully accelerate their development, get closer to their goals. And it allows you to potentially bring more people into each of those tiers, but it's scalable because it's not a one-to-one relationship, meaning one person doesn't equal 12 hours every single time. You're putting them into a system that you can essentially put not an infinite amount of people, but you can keep putting more and more people in there. And that's not a direct correlation to time spent for you.
Yeah.
Right.
No, without a doubt.
Yeah. So you had obviously CoachNow to support you in a lot of that. You brought in other coaches. Let's talk about some of the scary bits that I know a lot of coaches have when they move from this lesson model, this a la carte model, where they're charging for, again, every assessment that they give, every lesson that they give, doesn't matter about the sport, just all these little services that they offer. Some of the questions that we get are, well, how am I going to help move my existing people in? How are my existing people going to feel about this? And you touched on this a little bit. But if you could kind of give a few more examples of how you helped your existing clientele transfer into this kind of new way of programming, I think that would be helpful for people.
Well, I just made it more, I was talking about the added value that we're going to get. And I was surprised because, again, I thought this would be something more for my high performers. Like, okay, well, this is the way I want to go. I want to coach this type of player, and this is what they need. But actually, I was surprised with sometimes the recreational golfer was like, oh, I'd love to do that. I'd love to see my sports psychologist. I'd love to have, some fitness and strength and conditioning support. So it was something where I would just be having that conversation sometimes mid-session going, look, this is the way I'm thinking about doing it. I totally understand if you're not interested, but I'm going to be taking on a certain amount of clients. And then all of a sudden there was this thing, oh yeah, I'd love to be part of that. I was really surprised with the uptake. When you originally said to me about going to program, I was like, that is not going to be a worker for me. This is different. This is Wales, and it won't work, even though it was at a great facility. But when I introduced it, I was shocked by the uptake straight away. And then again, I built that into my online again, which we can talk about later, but it was creating that same model in an online presence, which worked incredibly well.
Yeah, so, I think, go ahead, Mark. Continue, please, if you've got some more stuff to add.
So that was the thing, to just basically bring it into conversation. I put it on my website. I marketed it through my Instagram, and sort of people could see what was out there. And a lot of people were messaging saying, look, I'd love to do that. And because it was this tiered system, it wasn't like straight in at a really high number. A lot of people started the bottom level, like the slightly cheaper entry level program, but then eventually most of them would move up through the tiers because they were enjoying it and they just wanted more support.
Yeah, and I think that's an important note for everybody, regardless again of your sport, is that if you give people the opportunity, quote unquote, to train like a pro, they love it.
Love it.
And what I mean by that is that you give them additional support resources, not just the hourly quick fix. If you give them a plan and the right people and the right technology, they love it. And it's more of a proven model to get better anyway. There's a lot of science to back up every single thing that we're offering in these programs that you're creating. And it's just a bigger win for everyone involved, and hopefully less of a decision of the different services. It's more of just like, oh, well, if I do my commit plan, I also get a equipment fitting, and I also get to see a trainer. And it's not, oh, I'm going to choose these things. It's more, no, this just comes with it.
Yeah. It was just deeper levels of that support, but it was something where I was like, and this is one of the things I discussed with you, is like, oh, do I offer a non-strength and conditioning one? Do I offer a non? And then all of a sudden you back at that, I can't. It's like, well, this is what it is. And if you don't want to use it, that's your choice, but that's what the program involves. And it worked better, and most people used it and enjoyed using it, even though maybe some wouldn't have done, I wouldn't have used the S&C, but actually when they did use it, they loved it.
Exactly right. Yeah. And I think that's an important aspect for anybody that's interested in the CoachNow software piece of this as well, is that please don't make that an a la carte choice. That's just a part of how you coach. Whatever technology you use, CoachNow or biomechanical tools or launch monitor tools, whatever it is in your particular sport, just make that a part of the offer, not a choice, because ultimately people are just going to be hesitant to choose things if you make it a choice. Just wrap it in and say, this is how I coach. Now, I think the important kind of stamp on all of this is saying that, for you, Mark, as a coach, saying, this is how I do it. I don't do it another way. Right. So maybe kind of talk us through the trepidation and the commitment that you had to kind of talk yourself into to say, no, this is how I do it. I'm not doing it the other way, even if XYZ people are asking me to do it a different way.
And I think the whole COVID situation was awful, wasn't it? Like, we were all off, the people being died. It was a terrible time for the world, wasn't it? But it was that point where I think everyone stopped for a period of time and had time to think. And if I hadn't had that time and then we hadn't got on the program, I probably would still be doing it now. I would still be probably on my similar program. It was only when I had to stop, I was like, okay, well, like, where do I want to go with this? Like, I'm trying to be too many things to too many different people. It's like, and you need to be like, this is the way I coach, and this is what I believe in, and this is what gets development. So that having that time to stop and think about it was like, okay, now I'm going to implement this. I'm going to run with it. And having obviously your sort of mentoring behind you to give that little bit of confidence in sort of what you're doing definitely helped. And then once that program was off and running, it picked up a head of steam really, really quickly. And I could see that I was slowly then doing less hours. I was still doing hourly coaching because that's always going to be part of the business. I was just filtering it. I didn't go cold turkey because I was, you have that thing of, well, okay, well, I got a family, I got a house,
right.
I got 3 kids, I got all these things that, you got to, you got to support, you're a provider. So it was that risk of, if I do this, is this going to have a huge effect financially? Are people going to leave and go to another coach? So I understand that as well. And I think what I did is I just sort of filtered it in gradually, but it moved pretty quickly towards more people doing programming.
Yeah. And I guess what I would say to everybody too, and piggybacking what you just said, is that I don't want your whole business to rely on this hourly exchange. There is an understanding that it might take time to shift, and there is an understanding that there might be a small aspect of this piece. And so when you look at your business in totality, right, you've got 100% of your business. What I want all of you to consider is how many how many revenue streams do you have, and which ones are providing you the best life business balance. So if you've only got one line of revenue, which is exchanging your time for money, that's a big problem, because we all know the world can change very quickly. You can get sick, family members, you get hurt, whatever it might be. Now your revenue is completely gone. Your business is gone. So it's about building these different lines of revenue that hopefully the biggest producers are the ones that also have the most leverage. It probably won't start that way, but that's where you want to get to in the end. But yes, don't, just fully jump ship and put out your whole family at risk if that's what if that's what you have in the background. But I do want to pause quickly because I see some questions coming in, because we have some folks that aren't really familiar with CoachNow, and they're here just to learn, which is fantastic. That's why we're here. But some folks are asking about the program that Mark's referring to. So it's the Connected Coach Blueprint. Jerem will put a link in here. We actually have a new cohort coming up soon. Not a hard sell at all, but if you're interested in a lot of this kind of stuff, it's definitely worth checking out. So Jerem will add the links and stuff for you, so you can learn more. But let's kind of move through to this transition. So entrepreneur, you're building your own business. All of a sudden you kind of hit a point where you go, I want more for my career. I want to learn. I want to grow as a coach. You contacted me. What was the impetus there? Because you obviously had something really starting to hum along. You're building a big business, but like a lot of entrepreneurs, you're like, well, now I can kind of see things differently. Maybe I actually want to do something differently. So talk us through the aha moment or how you got to the point of wanting to kind of switch gears.
Okay. So, as you said, I'd got to that point where I'd really now built exactly how I wanted it. I had my own academy. I had the guys coaching. They were busy. Commissioners are coming in. I had a really good online presence. Again, that had grown like tenfold through the whole changes with all the sort of remote coaching I was doing and creating this more holistic approach to it online, which gave me a little bit of a USP. So I'd sort of got to that point where everything was like as I wanted it. And I thought, okay, let's
blow it up and move.
Let's blow it all up and just try something new. So it was, it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever come to, but I was like, I just felt like it was the time to try something new. Otherwise, I was going to be that point where I'd have been doing the same thing in another 10, 15 years. And don't get me wrong, there's anything wrong with that, because I was very, very happy there. And, I had a great lifestyle. So there's a lot of things to be said for that, but just something inside said, okay, well, look, let's try to keep growing. Let's get somewhere where you're going to be challenged and be around with the best in the world. I wanted to work ultimately with tour players. I wanted to work with people who wanted to go on and win majors. That was just my sort of mindset of the type of player I wanted to work with. And I just thought that I needed to come somewhere where that was available. So I thought America, Texas or Florida, that's where a lot of the sort of golfing hotbeds are. So that's when I reached out to you and we just had that conversation saying, I'm not sure, but, I'm thinking about maybe trying something different. Is there any sort of recommendations? Just tell me where's a good area to go. That would have been enough. But obviously from there we had this, you put me in touch with a few people on camera being one of them. And then we had this conversation via Zoom, just like this. It was in the middle of lockdown and we just saw things really similarly. We got on well with Cam and Corey of Altus, and it just seemed like it was a good fit. And then a few days later, I was handing across my sort of resume and references, and then it was next thing the visa was going in within a few weeks of that. So
yeah,
it all happened really, really quickly. But it was like, okay, well, if I'm going to come across here, I want to be with, the best. And I think I'm very privileged to be in somewhere like this where you are surrounded by the best coaches and access to some of the best players.
And let's talk about that transition a little bit too, because as I noted, and we kind of talked about a few minutes ago, it's really important that you maintain your own identity. That's what when we had kind of our one-to-one coaching sessions, that was something I harped on, just because my experience was, this was many years ago before Edufy and CoachNow, but I was a young guy, built up a good business. Then I worked at an academy where we trained juniors. It was a whole big deal, but I had to essentially let go of anything that I had already built, which was very difficult and ultimately really foolish of me to do that. In today's day and age, 10 plus years later, I think it's more obvious that you can have your own presence because of Instagram and other tools that didn't exist when I used to actively coach. So I hope that nobody makes those same kind of mistakes moving forward. So maybe if you can kind of talk us through the conversations that you had with Cameron, whatever is appropriate to share, obviously. Yeah. But as you were coming into the relationship and you maybe had that moment where you really needed to kind of stand up for yourself a little bit as a part of identifying if this was the right opportunity for you. These are conversations that I'm sure people are nervous to have.
No, totally. And I think that was one of the beauties when we had that initial conversation, and we were, at that point, I didn't even really know it was in effect an interview. It was just a conversation. I was thinking maybe they're going to put me in touch with someone. I didn't really know where it was going to lead at this point. But then as the conversation was going on and it was getting more into specifics, what I loved was we want you to come here. There's a spine of what we do in high performance and how we coach, but you can use your brand within our brands. You can use your YouTube within our YouTube and use on your Instagram. So it's very much this sort of, that you are collaborating more.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic being here and learning from these guys and just seeing they all coach in different manners, but there's a real spine through what they do. That is the Altus way, the prime to perform, that performance side of things, which is amazing, which everyone's got their own style, but they all lead to the same destination. So, and that's what I loved, is that it wasn't like, okay, well, look, this is the way you're going to coach. I had an opportunity to come across to America, but it would have been for a coach that coached a very specific way. And then I think, well, okay, well, now I'm just losing why I'm here and what I'm doing just to coach a certain manner. And that's what I didn't want to do. And that's what I think I respect most about these guys, is that they respect the individual and they can see that we're all pulling in the same direction. But that was a conversation that was, sort of, they brought that forward. So that made it easier. But that would have been a conversation I would have had to have had. And that's why I hadn't taken opportunities in the past, because I just knew it was going to be a certain way of coaching everyone the same, which I personally don't believe in, and I don't think Altus the same. It's we're all individuals, and we've got to be coached to the individual rather than just you're all going to be this mold, which you see a lot of there at the moment, isn't it? You see a lot of that. Yeah. Everyone's going to have the Instagram full swing, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the things I've always appreciated about Cameron is he's one that says, I'm data informed but not data driven, and yes. I think you can kind of extrapolate that into a whole bunch of other areas of his decision-making style, in the sense that he wants to bring as many people in to the fold to get all the information, but he's not going to be going down a particular path with every single person and every single collaborator, such as yourself. It's going to work differently. Yeah. And these are conversations that are difficult to have, but again, I can't implore it enough for all of you to just make sure that you have your own personal brand as an exit parachute always there for you, because there's such big turnover in most of the academies across every sport across the entire world. We see it all of the time. Mm-hmm. And without naming names, we hear a lot of our academy partners come in a month or two after signing on with us, and then they say, well, this coach left, now we got this new coach, and this coach left, and now we got this new coach. It happens a lot. Mm-hmm. I think the gold standard of most academies is to have high retention of staff and collaborators and high retention of your clientele. If you've got both of those, then you've got really something humming along beautifully. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And just as you guys, if you're not ready to be on your own and you're working looking to work with other people, just make sure that you kind of protect yourself the entire way if you can. Really important. So before we take questions, because we do have a lot of them coming in, which is great, and we had a bunch that were pre-populated before, I want to touch on two more things. One, Mark, what do you think if I just said, hey, Mark, what's your number one piece of advice? And again, we have a lot of coaches from different sports here, but let's say if you're a newer coach, so to kind of put a little bit of framework on it and maybe even looking back at your career, what kind of things, let's just frame it this way then. Looking back at your career, what might have you have done differently knowing what you know now as you start off? And again, specifically around the business side of things.
I mean, probably a couple of things I would say. I know you were one, but I mean, know your customer. I mean, I think that was the big thing. Like, who do you want to deal with, and how do you want to be portrayed as a coach? I think that was one of that's the starting point. It's like, okay, who do I want to work with? That's a huge one. If you know what type of customer it is, whether that's the guy trying to break 100 or someone trying to break 90, or it's an elite player, whatever it may be, I think that's a really good starting point. And then once you know what that customer is like, then you can almost work backwards from there. Right. I think that's huge, for me is having that and get mentoring. Like I wish I'd had more mentoring sooner. And I generally and again, I know it's like there's no difference to me who goes in this program, but for me, it was the best thing I did going on the CoachNow program. That is honestly, and that's true, because sometimes when you're on the wheel, you just think you're busy, so you must be doing well, which, okay, to a point, that is probably our first thing as a coach is you want to get busy. And then when your diary's full, okay, well then what's next? Because, when you're then you're just on the wheel, and that's years and years have gone by, and then you're just, standing there just regurgitating out lessons, which is what I never wanted to do. I always wanted to be, quality. I had this vision of how I wanted to coach. So I think that's the big thing.
Well, there's a difference between being busy and being productive, right?
100%. Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of us as coaches aim to be busy rather than actually productive. And when I say productive, like, you've got your systems in place so the business is productive, not just you being busy, right?
Without a doubt. So I think those are the sort of two big things. I mean, there's other stuff like the marketing. We talk about the funneling, and making sure that you portray yourself in the right way and make it very simple for your customer to know what he or she is trying to buy into. But you talked about this on my website. It's a beautiful website, but I had about
it did look nice.
70 if you can negotiate your way through it. I had about 50, 60 pages in there, but now I think I've got about 7 or 8, and now it's much cleaner and very clear when you go there what you need to be directed to, whether that's an online remote coaching, which I now do through Altus anyway. I've got that link on my website. So again, that's that beauty of that collaboration thing. My website's still live, but it gets the link to the Altus side of things as well. I think you nailed it, really, because hearing what we hear, and we obviously work with coaches from all over the world at different stages of their career, different sports. I think that's a really great advice to say, know who you want to coach from day one. And the reason why that's so important is that you will attract those people if you make it clear who you actually want to work with, versus just saying, I'm a tennis coach, I'm a soccer coach. It's like, well, do you really want to work with a 5-year-old where it's basically babysitting? Do you really want to work with a high performance player and you're not quite prepared for that? And that's not the type of world that you want to be in. So be very clear. And then on top of that, get some mentoring along the way. I think a lot of us are in the habit of getting mentored from the technical certification piece, but not necessarily looking at the business of coaching as a business. We're just looking at it as how busy can I get as the end target. And then sometimes when you have that as the goal, it's never going to be too late, but it's so hard to change directions if that's your whole business at that point, is just being busy. So, and that's why obviously you've kind of noted that the pandemic was a place where you had the opportunity to pause, whereas if you hadn't, you might not have even looked at the opportunity that we were providing, because you just would have said, I'm busy, I'm successful because I'm busy, not looking at it from a business mindset. So, well, obviously glad you're here and glad we got to work together, because I'm so pumped on where you are. Let's talk quickly remote coaching. So we have what we believe is the most functional form of coaching, which we call connected coaching, which is a mixture of in-person and remote, so hybrid of sorts, where you're going to see someone, then you're going to monitor them, maintain the relationship, and then see them again.
But obviously there's some cases where you may never see anyone. And CoachNow can provide that connection point and that collaboration point with that athlete as well as other professionals. So I know we had some questions come in around this. I'm not going to read the specific ones just yet, but if you can kind of talk us through the offering and then also how you wrapped in the other coaches, and without talking specific numbers necessarily, because I don't think that's exactly as important as the flow of it all. How did you create the compensation relationship between everybody? So they're like, yeah, this makes sense for, so it was a win for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it was something that I wanted to, like I said to you, that this is how I coach. And I'd made that decision of, I wanted to incorporate those experts because I believed in them. And I believe that it's mind, body and soul, like it's all parts of it. And I wanted to have that. And that was a decision I made in the end to put that into my online presence. So I had a basic, entry level. You can send me a video, I'll send you a review. It was a way of getting, players in initially. So that was my very basic entry level. You send me a video, I'll send you back to you via CoachNow. I then had above that, which my two other programs, which was more holistic, in-depth approach. So it was unlimited support with videos. Now, generally, most people would send probably one a week. Some people might send 3, but the actual touch point is so little to give a great review back. It might take you 2 to 3 minutes, even with doing a demo. It's very, very simple. The touch point's very low. It's very, very effective. I then incorporated the other guys with me. So then we agreed that this is what they charge. And I built that into the package. And then I put an extra amount on for administrating that and pulling it all together. So then they would go into, what I did is it goes into a group section. I didn't run it into a
So I wanted to ask, yeah.
Yeah, so I put it in a group. I run everything through groups now. I don't do anything in the standard profiles. So everything goes through groups. So when a new player comes, whether he or she is online or in person, they go into groups, and then I individualize all the sections: swing, S&C, fitness, nutrition, short game, bunker play. So they can click into any section they want and just see what we're working on. I prefer that than having them scroll through the profiles, which again is what I always did up until probably 2 years ago. But let's pause
there really quickly for those new CoachNow folks or those that are interested. So we've got spaces where it's a timeline dedicated to the athlete. We do have tags, so you can find things. Mark is using a feature that's more so built for groups, but if you have a high performance athlete that is pretty tech savvy, you can use a group, and then you can use channels within the group to organize the content to make it slightly easier. But that athlete then needs to post in the right channel. So for a lot of you, your athletes aren't going to be savvy enough to even do that. But Mark's taking a little bit more of the advanced approach, which I definitely advocate for the right clientele. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that.
Yes. So once those sections are in place, and particularly because I was involving other experts,
yes,
that's why I started probably doing it that way more, because I didn't really want it all just blurring into one space. Yep. I wanted to be the S&C guy was putting into S&C, and the sports psychologist guy was putting it into the sports psychology section. So from there, then I could as like you said, they were built in. I would add an extra bit on top for it. And it gave me a little bit of a USP, which is a bit different to what was out there because it was more holistic and it was online. I'd had that up and running prior to COVID. I'd had an online presence, but it was ticking over. It was never anything that I was pushing that hard. I would always pick up a few clients, but it was never, I would say my retention was never really that high on it. It would be something dipping in. They'd have a video. I'd send it back. And it was very much a very basic approach to it. Okay. Then when I changed this more holistic remote coaching style, where it was a lot more in-depth review support and sort of more holistic approach to the whole thing, that's when it all changed. And then that part of the business grew tenfold. So that was the big one, because then I can now go, well, okay, I can see that this is the future. It's never going to replace the face-to-face.
Right.
But I think with the metaverse and everything that's coming out there, I think we're going to see a big shift. And then with the whole COVID thing, we had so many more people learning in that style. They actually loved it. And then they went, I'm going to carry on with this, and I might just come and see you once a month, but I prefer actually to be able to send you a video, you send me a review. A lot of people have got home setups now. You can't buy TrackMans and SkyTracks. They're all sold out because everyone's got a home setup now. So I think the whole learning style has changed massively. So I think that's a big opportunity for all coaches out there in every sport, that it's going to change. So if we can move with it, we'll hopefully be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and even in a perfect scenario outside of an academy where they live and train with you, which is a very small percentage of any population, the majority of someone's development is not in front of you. So you need to create a digital environment and a digital relationship to make sure that they stay on track. Because we all have the old school lesson where it was, you see them the next month, they come back and they go, well, I didn't really practice because I didn't know what to do. And they're worse than when they left before. There's no excuse for that anymore. Everyone should maintain some level of momentum.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not going to become amazing within 30 days or from wherever they start, but we want to give them the tools, the tactics, and the relationships to help them improve, whether you're seeing them in person at all or a mixture or just in a remote fashion.
And you can create this incredible accountability, can't you, with the app? Yeah. This is what I love with it is, even with my online clients or my clients that are on site, I can just drop a voice note in just saying, hey, I haven't seen any videos this week. What's going on? Yeah, I've noticed you haven't put anything into your practice logs. Are you practicing? Any reason why? Do you need any help? It's just a great touch point for attention, but also for accountability.
Yep. And I think one of the last things we'll do right before we take a question is just kind of point out that while Mark is still actively doing a lot of this coaching, he is creating opportunities for separate lines of revenue. And there's no reason why he couldn't, if it's something he wants to do, create an on-demand version of a lot of this content as an entry vehicle into his personalized coaching programs. That's something that we are currently doing inside of CoachNow. We're going to expand on that in the next couple of months. We'll be releasing some features that'll make that even easier, because we want to help you not just purely have this time for money exchange. Even though in the way that we coach, it's way more leverage, there's still even more leverage and automation to be had for all of us to kind of monetize the expertise 24/7, which is what I hope. So I know Cameron and Mark, are you guys working on kind of that content vehicle? I know you guys create a lot of free content.
Yeah.
Are you guys working on kind of some digital courses or digital things that people can consume?
There's a lot of stuff going on in the background now, because obviously they've got China about to open up. Obviously they've got Altus Europe, and I think it will see that it will expand out bigger and bigger. It's just exciting to be in at the sort of beginning stage of it and be sort of face to face with these guys and just see it sort of developing. And that'll be, he's a prodigious content creator now, isn't he, with the golf channel and everything else as well. But there's more in the pipeline, and again, it's something that we've talked about, is that's something that I'm going to prioritize next. It's difficult as a coach. You've just got to triage, okay, what's the most important thing at the moment, rather than think that before it's just easy to have loads of ideas and not really execute any of them. But that's something that should be the next avenue from a personal point of view, where there would be like an online premium section.
Good. Yeah, I was reminded of this quote the other day. We don't want to be stepping over dollars just to pick up pennies. And I think a lot of us are just picking up those pennies in those hour lessons versus taking a step back and creating a vehicle, a real system for change that can be monetized with or without you. So let's jump into questions. Jerem, if you can keep chatting them at me. I know we've had a lot come in. If you can filter them my way, that's great. One of the first questions here, and we'll try to keep these answers as short as we can. And they're going to be directed as you, Mark, but so we can fire through them. We talked a lot about high performance. CoachNow has a lot of high performance coaches and athletes in the platform, but we also have, and maybe this isn't as clear, but we also have a lot of people that are just more of the casual athlete. Yeah. But even though you're casual and you don't have aspirations to play at a professional or competitive level, you still want to get better. So you obviously have coached and still recognize more of that casual athlete. Can you kind of talk us through the programming or maybe their interaction and their adoption, even though they're not the high performance athlete?
I think with the CoachNow profile, I still would advocate using the standard spaces for your players, because it's a great touch point. It's fantastic for reflection. So, when you have that client coming, to be able to send that review at the end of it, film a recap, which I know a lot of the guys do a really good job of, so that the player can go away and reflect on it, and they can post videos back in, and you can offer that support, which gives you amazing retention. Like, that was one of the big things I did years ago in, I think, 2014, 15, when I started using Edify at that point.
Yeah.
was, I was, yeah, it was the good old days. So it's literally when, I would coach and then I would upload the screencast at the end of it, and then they could send a video back in the meantime. So it just created this incredible retention because it was just more than maybe what you were getting elsewhere, and it just gives you a little bit of an edge where to send a review sometimes would take 30 seconds just to come back and say, yeah, you need to square your shoulders up, or why don't you try this? But again, as a retention basis, it was amazing. And for your club golfer or club any level recreational sports person, it's still an amazing tool to use those spaces.
Yeah, and I think the way that we phrase it, and we don't necessarily phrase it publicly this way, but we call it an athlete relationship management platform. And that's kind of a mouthful, but we really understand, because we've been doing this for so long, the value of that relationship. So in a lot of ways, it's not about someone going from beginner to advanced in the shortest amount of time. It's more about, does my coach even care about me?
Yeah.
And if they show that they care, I'm in, right? So if you're worried about participation, if you're a golf coach at your club or a tennis coach or any of those levels, if you're worried about any of that, it usually boils down to the athlete, the sports person, as Mark put it, not being cared for, not at least feeling cared for. And I think when you have these digital touch points that, as Mark said, might take 30 seconds, but maybe even provide, if you just did it from time to time, like a 30-second review from you might provide 20 hours of happiness to that athlete, right? If you just kind of looked at it that way. So I think that's fantastic advice. So let's keep firing through. So this is more of a tactical coaching thing rather than a business thing. So we'll try to keep it short if we can, but I think it's a good question. When you have a student that comes to you and you identify, you go, oh, wow, this particular student has a lot to work on. And this is obviously going to be kind of golf focused because you can't really speak to other sports in the same level of expertise. How are you choosing what to focus on first out of that?
That's a great question. I always say to clients, like anything, if the best player in the world come in, you're always going to pick out a number of things, but it's triaging what's the most important thing at this moment in time. And I think it's important to sort of be clear with them. Look, these are the things we're going to be working on, but at this moment in time, we need to focus on this. This is your first step. So whether that's coming from the setup and working into the initial movement, but making it very clear, like why we're doing this. We're doing this because, the setup here is going to allow us to move better in the backswing. So you're explaining why you're doing it, but you're giving the buy-in, saying, look, I need you to work on this first. You come back in a few weeks' time, we work on the next thing if you feel like you're comfortable with that. So I would say it's giving the player a really good understanding of why you're doing it in that order. And coming to, look, I'm going to come to this, but this is the first port of call because we need to do this first because it's that domino effect, isn't it? As it works
exactly right. Yeah, and in some cases, if you pick the right starting point, the rest of the stuff, as you just said, just goes away because it's just a kinetic sequence or it's the dominoes, as you've said.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you're confident enough as a coach to know where to start, which I hope that all of you would be from a technical standpoint, you then have to, quote unquote, sell them that this is the right thing to be doing and make sure they really understand the why part of it. Because a lot of people are apprehensive because they've read Golf Magazine or watched a video the other day and they come to you and tell you how they're going to do it. But at the same time, they're paying you. So it's always confusing in that sense. So you got to really kind of anchor in. So I think that's fantastic advice. Let's go. This is a kind of a double whammy as far as working with other instructors. So I'm going to try to combine two questions here. Talking about training other coaches that are under you. And I don't necessarily like that phrasing, but it's more of like that work with you and they might be staff members that you're mentoring. And then the conversation around compensation. So the commission aspect, right? You're the director. Some of their fees are pulling up to you. So let's talk about the training and the compensation conversation, because in some ways they're married together as a way to bring a new person onto the team.
Yeah. I always preferred my coaches to shadow. Like I preferred them to be physically watching. You can read a textbook. There's amazing information on the internet on biomechanics, on ground forces. You can find that information there. But I think the hardest thing with coaching is watching how a really good coach delivers. And when you watch really good coaches, and I've seen that here in Altus, I've seen it back in the UK, it's that you can't learn more than when you're in a session. And I always preferred my coaches to come and watch me rather than necessarily standing there with a chalkboard talking about positions or 3D or whatever it may be.
Right.
So I would always implore that, because I think you learn so much by watching. I used to like watch my assistants or my other coaches. You'd learn stuff. Okay, they might be newer to it than you, but you're like, oh, well, that's really cool the way they've used that drill, the way they question them that way. We can always learn at every level, isn't it? So I would implore more of that than necessarily a chalk and talk approach.
Okay, and then with that, they're deciding to come and work on your team with you. And you've had it kind of the opposite when you were making the decision to work with Cameron. So again, without specifics, can we talk briefly about the compensation conversations? Because coaches have a really hard time talking about money.
Yeah.
Whether it be with people they work with, or especially when they're trying to sell their students on actually paying them. I found their tone of voice goes into almost an apologetic frame of, I'm sorry, I'm charging you. So talk us through some of those compensation conversations.
So compensation for my coaches to me?
So for the coaches working with you, to where they understand that a portion of their coaching is working their way up to you, because that might be seen as a tricky conversation to have. And I can understand that.
Yeah, I think it was a bit easier on my side of things, because I was actually making a lot of the referrals. So it was like, here's the X commission that you're going to get. But this might be tiered as you hit this number. So maybe there's an incentive for them to, and again, the approach can be very different for every person, but maybe having a tiered system works well, where they know as they hit X amount of income or commission paid, they gain back another 2.5% or 5% or whatever it may be. That has always worked quite well, because they got the incentive of, if I keep going, I can get to that threshold, which worked well. And that was always, I just put it in place that you're paying this commission because you're using this facility and you're having access to these players. If you're going to put on a doorstep, put on your doorstep for you, you've got access to golf balls, great facilities to use. So that was, I think it's selling what you're giving them, as well as just like, okay, well, you're paying me commission to coach someone.
Right. Yeah. So you're driving warm leads to them. You're giving them access to a premier facility. So it's a little bit more understood in that way. So,
and the learning they're going to get off you as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think for all of you that asked that question, because we had that question kind of come in a few different ways, we'll do what we can to maybe get more specific in a blog post or something, because we have experience with this, and maybe Mark can kind of offline help, like be a guest blogger or something on this subject. So I think that'd be helpful. So I think we've got time for 2 more questions. So what exactly is needed? And we talked about this a little bit, but I think let's get a little more clear if we can. What exactly is needed, in your opinion, to transition in from the lesson model into, just simply put, kind of the subscription model? Because a lot of coaches, again, are, even after hearing you, they're excited, but they're nervous about this kind of thing. What do you think you need to do to be successful at that?
I think you just got to be really clear and sell the benefit. I mean, it's not that you're forcing it down the neck, and that's why for me, I had the high, like I had my individualized and I had this, and I ran them both for a bit, but I was there in every session going, look, if you want more support, I offer this, I've got this guy can help you. So it's more selling the benefit rather than going, okay, this is what I'm doing, and you either take it or you don't.
Right.
Most people went for it. I was surprised like how many people went across, players that I thought necessarily wouldn't, went across it. But you've got to sell the benefit of what you're doing to them, because ultimately you've got to believe there's a benefit, which I personally did. And if you could sell that benefit to them, and then they try it and it works well, then the rest will take care of itself.
Yep. And we talk at great length about all the mechanics involved in that within the blueprint. So again, Jeremy, you can drop the link if anybody's interested in that, because the chat's now full. But that's basically what I'm advocating for, is moving into that. But you can't just walk out and say, I do subscription coaching now. There's a lot of other elements that underpin that. It's how you market it, how you talk about it. It's the offers that you actually create. It's standing by those offers and not being convinced otherwise that this is how you should coach, by becoming a victim of your clientele in a way. You have to be the one that directs them, not only how they coach, but how they communicate, their expectations, who they work with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Jeremy can drop that in. And then let's see, we got a bunch of questions here. So we've got a few questions revolved again around remote coaching. A lot of them actually, where it's just pure remote. I think one important aspect to touch on, and Mark, then we'll let you go because I know you're going to be running late on something here. But let's talk about remote coaching, but also understanding that the remote coaching doesn't have to be live. So what I want to clarify here, right? It's not 1,000 Zoom calls. It's a Zoom call, maybe once a month, or how often you see that as a benefit. But the rest of it is asynchronous. Yeah. And what I mean by that is that you're posting, they're posting, you're collaborating on the schedules that work for you. Therefore, it's not a time for money exchange, because you're not having to show up at a certain place at a certain time. So let's talk about the power of asynchronous. We wrote a blog about it too, but in your words, and then we'll wrap it up. The power of the asynchronous part of this, because so many people get hooked on, I got to do live calls, I got to do this, or do you have live Zoom integrated in CoachNow? And we say, well, you could just use Zoom, put the video in CoachNow, and do the rest of it asynchronously. Is what you should do. There's more power there. So this will be the last question.
So basically, what I was doing was, in the COVID, I had the remote, like as in I was online because I had time. I was off every day. So that was an offering I did at the time. I don't offer that now. It's now really very much via, they send reviews, or they'll send posts, I send reviews back. And then once a month, I normally have a check-in, maybe twice a month. And it's very much to not necessarily do anything technical, but it's just to sit down and have a conversation going, how do you think this last month's gone? What could we have done different? Like, what do we need to do? Like, how can we maximize your time? Like, if you're not getting a chance to go to the range, well, what can we do in the house to make it better? So it was just more of a conversation to make sure they were getting the best out of the program, but also make sure they're going on to the next month. And I've gotten, I can make sure I can maximize their support and their development. So for me, I think it's less of the online, even though I can understand the benefit of that if you've got a bit more time. It was more to have this additional income without having to spend lots of time on it. And it's super beneficial without spending a lot of time. That's the beauty of it. So everyone's winning.
Yep. So we call it micro touch points. And I kind of said this before, a 30-second touch point might provide, a silly example, 20 hours worth of value, right? Just by making sure that you're letting them know that you care and you're giving them something to potentially think about or work on. Beautiful. So we've gone slightly over time. Mark, you've been super generous.
No problem.
It's been so great working with you on all these different levels. And I really appreciate you sharing all the experience and the insight that you have with this group. This is recorded. We are going to share it out there for those of you that maybe had to come late or missed it. But Mark, thanks again, man. And let everybody know where they can follow you on social just in the start. We'll follow up too, but just in the quick part.
You can go onto Instagram. It's under Elite Golf Coach, or YouTube Elite Golf Coach. Same on Twitter. Or you can go to www.elitegolfcoach.com. And Spencer, thanks so much. A real honor to be on here. I know you can ask anyone, so I'm very honored to be part of it. And thanks for all your help over the last few years. You've been invaluable.
You're welcome, man. And everybody watch out for Mark. He's to the moon, I guess, is what I would say as we wrap up. So thanks everybody for being here. We'll follow up. We'll try to get all your questions answered one way or the other. And thanks again. See you, Mark.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you.